how they get through these difficult problems. So I've selected 3 questions based on my personal experience. I have selected a panel of experts to help address questions that I've come up with. Then I'll turn it to you, to the audience, to discuss among themselves how you would handle these questions, and they'll bring it all together at the end. So I'm just kind of curious about who is in this room. By a show of hands, who is this first AGM conference? All right, all these newbies, that's wonderful. That's great. And then by a show of hands, how many of you have been with IDA or doing dark sky awareness for at least 3 years? Okay, cool, excellent. How about 5, 10, 20, 30? All right, so there's a lot of diverse experiences in this room. Yeah, that's wonderful. So probably some of the things I'll come up with my own questions you've probably already encountered, and you'll have a good concrete way of addressing it in your own communities. So a little bit of background about me. People keep asking me, where are you actually from? My name tag says I'm from Tucson. I did my undergrad here. I'm currently getting my master's degree in California, but I'll be talking about my work in Minnesota. So I've kind of been all over the place. So my master's degree is in sensory ecology. It's a relatively new field within the last decade, and it's really exciting because we study the impacts of things like artificial light and noise on animals' behavior and physiology, and how it changes community structures of natural populations. And to me, what's really fascinating about this field is we've introduced artificial light and noise within the last 100, 150 years. So this is a novel environmental pressure, and we still don't really have an idea of how animals are responding and how they're going to respond as these pressures continue to increase in their natural environment. And I really wanted to take my research background and put it into applied management. How do you use science to actually make a difference, right? So that led me to complete an internship with the Future Park Leaders of Emerging Change with the National Park Service. So Future Park Leaders is a program for undergraduate and graduate students to tackle an emerging problem relating to climate change within the parks. And this year, National Parks created 2 internships addressing light pollution as a driver of climate change. And the project that I worked on decided to help Voyageurs National Park with their Dark Sky Park application. So applying for the dark sky certification is becoming a prevalent solution for a lot of park units, as nearly 30 of them have already received the accreditation, and that number is growing every year. Most of these certified places happen to be in the western United States, and this is the map that was published in the paper earlier this year. It's just another way of showing the same information we've been talking about over and over, where the blue regions represent the darkest skies in the United States. And as you can see, that most of these regions are indeed in the west, like where Grand Canyon is, as well as where the Basin and Range Dark Sky Cooperative is located. However, there are prominent anomalies in the east, and luckily Voyageurs just happens to be in that red box in the Arrowhead region of northern Minnesota. So if you've never been to Voyageurs National Park, it's an incredible place to come visit. About 1/3 of the park is comprised of pristine freshwater lakes, and the other 2/3 is comprised of immaculate pristine wilderness area. So some common things you'll see will be loons and migratory birds, beavers. Maybe you'll be lucky to hear a wolf howl at night. It's all these cool sensory experiences in this remote area. So what I was tasked to do within my 12-week program was pretty much put all the materials together for the dark sky application. So that means doing the light audit. I designed the lighting management plan from scratch. I designed how the park was going to meet the 2/3, 90, and 100% compliance by the next 10 years. Not to mention as building partnerships and relationships with the local communities and building a lighting management plan to prove our education and dedication for our visitors about effective outdoor lighting. Luckily, I could focus my attention on the 4 facilities throughout the park, and that would just be Rainy Lake Visitor Center, Cabotogama Visitor Center, Ash River Visitor Center, and the Kettle Falls Historic Hotel. So I thought, originally that my work would be pretty straightforward, just these 4 areas, and then we put the application in, no problem. However, I did notice something interesting when I started to look at light pollution maps of the area. So I got these images from the World Atlas Light Pollution Map. These are in radians or light emitted from this area where the park boundaries is outlined in red. And what's really nice about this application is it shows light values within the last 7 years. So you can go back and look at light values in 2014, and you can see that there's hardly any emitted light coming throughout the park. There's no color, which would be black. These are the darkest skies pretty much, and with a couple of examples of light spilling from outside sources. However, in just a span of 5 years, the mean radiance value more than doubles. And if you did the light trends application from this website, you can see that light is actually increasing at a 4% rate in this area, all because of this light spillage from other sources. So here's what that looks like from the ground view. And that might be hard with the lights turned on, so I'll just point at it. So these are sky quality images taken at our facilities. I had help from the IDA chapter leader, Cynthia Lapp, with her camera. And these pictures are both taken at facilities. Rainy Lake Visitor Center is about 18 kilometers or 11 miles from the joint city centers of International Falls, as well as Fort Frances in Canada. And if you can see it, there's this very clear light dome.
Turn off the lights.
How do you, I can't. So imagine you can see what I'm talking about. It's not just a black screen. So you can see the light dome with your naked eye, right? Well, this visitor center is pretty close to the city center, so you think that as you become more remote in a further location that you wouldn't see artificial light anymore. Well, when you come to Kettle Falls, which is pretty much one of the most remote places in the park, which is, oh, there it goes. Effective lighting, it's great. So it's about 56 kilometers or about 35 miles away from the city center, and you can still see that light dome at the bottom left corner. And remember that the joint population between these two cities is about 11,000 people, and you can still see the light domes. So imagine what that light dome is going to look like when your city is comprised of hundreds of thousands or even millions of people. And how far do you have to be away to no longer see that source of artificial light? So now my job just became a lot more complicated. So if my endeavor is to help preserve natural skies above Voyagers for future generations, I had to come up with a creative solution on how to think about what to do with these external sources of light. But they're out of my jurisdiction. My job was just to focus on the lights within the park. So that became my first obstacle. How can I use the park to encourage other communities to want to get involved and take their own action? And can what the park's actions actually be a way to stimulate that encouragement and investment with these local residents? So to address this first question, I'm going to ask Mike Weasner, who is the IDS Place Committee Chair, to give his own insight. Mike has experience with Oracle State Parks and their certification, helping engaging events and general advocacy for its visitors and local residents, and getting people immersed and inspired to join this dark sky awareness movement. So Mike, what strategies did you discover when building engagement from the ground up?
Thank you, Ashley. So before I talk about that, as most of you know, I'm a Jedi Master. So a story for you I have. Back in 2012, my wife and I were visiting New York City, and we're standing out in front of Rockefeller Center, and I'm wearing a jacket that has this no light pollution or stop light pollution pin on it. A gentleman walks up to me out in front of Rockefeller Center, and he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he looks me straight in the eye, and he says, "You support heavy pollution?" So I took advantage of that opportunity to begin to explain what light pollution was to this guy. Well, as it turns out, he was about 35 years old. He was born and raised in New York City, went to school in New York City, never got a job in New York City, never got out of New York City. He had absolutely no experience with what he was missing by not seeing the night sky. So I said, okay, great. This is a guy that I can talk to and tell him about the human health effects, the wildlife effects, the birds flying into the buildings, the energy cost, wasted money. Did not matter to him because all that was tied to the night sky that he had no connection to. So that was kind of the beginning of my journey as an amateur astronomer of how do I reach out to people like that. Well, a couple years later, I'm up in Oracle. We had bought the land in Oracle in 2004. I got a chance to early retire 2007. Moved to Oracle, got a house built, got an observatory built. In early 2014, I'm sitting out there in my observatory as an IDA member, looking up, enjoying my night sky. I'm seeing seventh magnitude stars. I'm seeing the triangular galaxy with my naked eye back then. And I'm thinking, IDA has this Dark Sky Places program. We have a park, a state park 4 miles east of me. Why don't we try to get these two things connected and get that Oracle State Park, which is about an hour north of here on the other side of Mount Lemmon, designated as an International Dark Sky Park. So contacted IDA. We had a meeting with IDA staff up at the park manager, one of the park rangers, and everybody said, yeah, let's do this. So short version of that story is we pulled it together in about 3 months, submitted it to IDA, and we got approved as the first International Dark Sky Park in the Arizona State Park system. Cool thing. Now, one of the neat things about this whole story that I'm getting to that question is you draw people out to your park that you now have designated, or if you're working on a designation. Well, one of the things that we have found to be very effective in Oracle State Park comes in that category of knowing your audience, knowing who you're trying to reach, who are you trying to pull in. Well, Oracle is an artist community. It's a ranching community. It's a retired mining community. It's a retired hippie community. So there's a diverse community environment all around Oracle State Park. How do we bring in all these people? The most effective thing that we have done to bring in new people to experience the dark sky is music. We have very frequent events up there with live music out on the historic ranch patio. We have local musicians from Tucson, musicians from Phoenix that come there and entertain park visitors. And we draw them into the park with this live music. They can bring a picnic with them, so they can bring food. They can dance to the music. We also do music on the trails. Oracle State Park is known as a 4,000-acre wildlife refuge, but it's also known as a hiking mecca because of all the trails that we have. We're part of the Arizona Trail System. So we started these music on the trails. We have musicians, a celloist, a flutist, a violinist, a singer stationed at various scenic points along the trails. And so they're out there walking in the daytime, late afternoon, and they stop and listen to the music, they enjoy the scenery, continue on. And as they get back to the park, and just like the music on the patio, as that's ending, we have telescopes set up. So people have come back into the ranch house area. They're getting ready to leave if they weren't planning to stay for the star party, but, oh, let's go see what's over here. What are they looking at through the telescope? Hey, Mommy, can I go over there and look through that telescope? I want to see Jupiter. I want to see the moons of Jupiter. I want to see the craters on Mars. We drew them in with the music. They stayed for the star party. And we see that consistently. So we're not drawing in the crowd that already understands the night sky. We're drawing in the people who did not understand the night sky. We used something that intrigued them, got them to come into the park, and they stuck around to see what all the excitement was about the night sky. It's a very, very effective approach. So the message is, find something that your target community is going to appreciate, whether it's music, whether it's a sporting event. It doesn't really matter what it is that draws them into your park. Once you have them there, they have to pass the telescope field to leave the park. They will stay.
Well,
Did that answer your question?
yeah, I
Okay.
definitely think so. Yeah, thank you.
So now it's your turn. So we're going to give you about, how are we doing? About 5 minutes. So each of your tables, and if you're a small table, you can double up, whatever. Just spend a few minutes talking about some what you've seen work here. And then at about 5 minutes, we'll come back and we will nominate a couple of different tables to share out very briefly some of the ideas in this area. So Ashley has some great ideas to leave and take with her. Thank you.
You know, kind of washed out. Oh, there's your opportunity. Take the telescopes to them, take the astronomy to them, and then they'll see the problem. The problem's not in the park.
Thank you. One more quick one. Oh, I'll come back to you next. Oh.
Your experience in Paris.
Okay. I'll be chauvinist. I'm sorry. I'll speak about Paris. On the Moon again was an exceptional occasion in Paris. It drew a lot of people to telescopes set up in the city, and it was a great occasion to speak about light pollution and why we cannot see deep sky objects in the city. That was one sort of vector for communication, and another one was creating art exhibits around the theme of light pollution, paintings. There was a regional park close to Paris which gave the theme of light pollution to its residents, and they were asked to create art exhibits on the theme of light pollution, so paintings and sculptures and so on. So, yeah.
Thank you. Back to you, Ashley.
You want me? Oh, okay, great. All right, so taking everything that we just heard, so like at this table we were talking about promoting and partners and different events. So coming to things like farmers markets and just handing out flyers like, hey, we're doing this thing, we're gonna have solar telescopes at this day, or come to our star party, or just having that conversation at your local community level. I've heard a lot of things about music and promoting art, so having just another way to enhance that experience with the night sky. So more than just like, hey, we have a telescope, what's another like emotional aspect that they can take away from looking at the sky, and like how are they going to remember that moment that you're sharing with them and keeping that when they talk about that natural resource. So here's what we decided to do. Since we couldn't go outside of the park, we invited people to come in to have that conversation. So we held a couple town hall events just to tell visitors and any residents who were interested what this certification was, why the park even cared about changing their lights, and we also endorsed several benefits of having a friendly dark sky, either from actually enhancing public safety and health, and actually how it affects not only how we view the night sky, but the nocturnal environment. Another thing that we were just talking about over here is we have a phrase in the national parks, half the park's after dark. So how we use the night environment is going to influence all the other organisms that rely on it as well. So we have to think like a bigger scale than just how we interpret it, not to mention conservation of energy and resources. Another thing that I've noticed throughout the last 2 days is when you're a federal agent or you're working for a bigger organization, how can you ask questions or how can you have that conversation with an external audience? And our answer was to use our nonprofit partner as an advocacy bridge. So our partner is Voyageurs National Park Association, and they've been more than eager to help promote these town hall events. We are also revamping our winter special speaker series to provide new ways for our visitors to interact with the night sky. And our partner is also looking for funding sources to put new lighting projects in the park. So that's another example of using your partner and having that communication with other people, just building the relationships from the ground up of what you can do just besides what your organization can accomplish. So now that we've started to talk about ideas of at a point scale, let's see if we can apply these solutions at a larger scale, maybe even at a region. So that's what we plan to do with the Heart of the Continent Partnership. This is a Canadian and American coalition of land managers and local stakeholders working together to solve issues relating to economic, cultural, and natural resources. So naturally, these three agencies decided that the night sky is one of these resources, since light pollution does not respect boundaries. And these three areas are, of course, Voyageurs National Park, as well as Quetico Provincial Park up here in Ontario, Canada, as well as Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness within Superior National Forest. What's really exciting is each of these three agencies are currently working on their dark sky applications, and hopefully within the next year or so, when we all receive the accreditation, they can come together and apply to become an international dark sky region. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. That's pretty exciting. And this is over 5 million acres of protected land and therefore protected night sky. And as you can imagine, with that kind of space, that's going to garner attention from local communities. And one such community is the city of Grand Marais. So they're the county seat and major municipality within Cook County, and they have the ambition of making their county dark sky certified. So what they'd like to do is first make the city certified officially and then bring it to the rest of the county. And you think that being in a remote, pristine location, that would be pretty easy for them, right? They don't have to worry about encroaching sky glow from a large city. And they already have a lighting ordinance. They say no new lights, they all have to be fully shielded, full cutoff. They actually enforce that new lights have to be 2700 Kelvin or less. They already have public outreach events, and they have a lighting project to update all new lights along Highway 61 to be dark sky compliant. So that all sounds like this should be pretty easy for them, but they are still encountering some major obstacles. Namely, they do not have a majority vote in their city council to pass any new legislation. And then people who own properties, such as hospitals and the gas stations, insist on using glaring 5,000 Kelvin temperature lights to promote human safety. So when you come against a situation where the majority of your community wants to move forward with dark sky advocacy and having the certification, but then you have individuals of political conflict, how do you resolve that issue? What kind of conservation tactics or strategies can you approach these individuals, try to meet a middle ground so you can all feel like you are safe, you are meeting the needs of both yourself as the certification as well as their own political agendas and moving forward as a healthy community. So to address that question, I'm going to hand it over to Cindy Luongo Cassidy. Cindy is the head of the IDA Texas chapter, and she has been a lighting consultant with 18 years of experience and has worked with decision makers to set a strong example of how to effectively create buy-in around dark sky advocacy work to protect the night from light pollution. So could you provide a synopsis of some of your experiences and what kind of resolutions did you come up with?
I will, and I should first mention that as of a few months ago, I am the past director of the IDA Texas chapter. I come from and work in a very conservative community that says, that we have basically two different populations. One will say, yes, we like the heritage of the night sky, but a lot of the community says, whoa, I want my lights because I feel safe. So you have that conflict, and then among all of them, across the board, there are people who said, you can't, we don't want any ordinance, we don't want you telling us what to do. So we went at it with a multi-pronged approach. Part of the approach was to educate people on an individual level, or maybe two at a time, where you sit and actually talk with them and work through the issues that they might have, help them, educate them beforehand. We actually ran a conference strictly for elected officials and city staffs from the counties all around us, so that they could, in a safe environment, learn what people were talking about and start to get comfortable with it, instead of having advocates storm their office or or have a big town hall where they're being asked questions in front of their constituents that they don't really understand. So that was a piece of it. Another thing that we did was to do what I'm sure a lot of you have done, and that is to take them on an outdoor lighting trip where we caravanned and looked at different lights in the community. Let them see for themselves what the results were when you had one type of light or another, whether they could see or not, whether they could see that, somebody's walking over there, or whether people were totally hidden. That was a big turning point once we, had everybody out for a lighting review. The other thing that in my community, I'm not sure, except when we got our dark sky designation, I'm not sure that we use the word dark. There are too many people who are afraid of the dark and who, if you say that, we want a dark sky, we want dark, 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 they will not listen to you at all. That just stops them in their tracks. So I knew my community well enough to know that's not something we talk about. We don't talk about wanting to see the stars. We talk about better lighting. We talk about seeing better. We talk about saving money. We talk about feeling safer because you can see better. And occasionally somebody will get down, through a talk or, after a conversation, and they'll say, "Can we see the stars better if we do that?" And I'll go, "Of course, it's the same type of lighting." So it's kind of a add-on at the end for that type of community. But again, as Mike said, it goes right back to knowing your audience. So that about covers it, I think, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So same drill, this time faster. Can anyone do that? I know it's late in the day. Anyone?
So one of the things that we talked about was changing the language with which you're talking with people. So one thing that I'm really interested in is sort of a case study with Andrew Yang. He has a policy for universal basic income, and he changed it to the freedom dividend. All of a sudden, all of these people who were turned off before to hearing what he had to say are now like, oh yeah, this is a right as an American. So if you have this applied to the night sky, we all have the right as Americans to see our natural heritage of our dark skies. So it's not our right to have whatever light we want, but it's our right to see the sky.
Great, that's a pretty high bar. Anyone take up the challenge? One more?
I apologize if I didn't hear this before, but lighting tour showing counterexamples.
So a lighting tour, show the good, the bad, and the ugly, out in the field, lighting in the wild.
Can I piggyback on one comment? Is that part of the protocol?
If it's 20 seconds or less.
Who speaks for the rights of the wildlife? This is a conversation that John and I have kind of had a little bit. Who speaks for what they deserve to have? Just a thought.
Back to you.
I'll go ahead and jump ahead. I'll just do a brief summary. We've been working with the IDA chapter, Starry Skies Lake Superior, to not only talk to the city councils and mayors of International Falls, Fort Francis, Grand Marais, and Duluth, but they've been using their own night sky festivals to reach out to new potential dark sky communities. So they've been to Carlton and Renshaw, Minnesota, Washburn and Ashland in Wisconsin, and all the way out to Wawa, Ontario. So their long-term goal is to hopefully protect the entire viewshed of Lake Superior and maybe even use that to propagate protecting viewsheds of all the Great Lakes. And so the final issue that I've noticed is once you start to have these conversations with your communities, and even if you get past to education and that initial awareness, there's still some pushback that some people might not always agree that this is even worth their time. And so I just like to quickly demonstrate what I am calling the perception paradox. So people live in these two dichotomous situations. They either live on the left, right, and that statistic that we keep saying that at least 80% of the world's population live in these light polluted areas. And so especially with my generation, even younger generations, this is the new status quo. This is what they're always accustomed to. So how are they supposed to care about something they've never seen or even have that personal connection with? On the other hand, you still have communities that live under dark skies, and not to say that they're taking the stars for granted, but they don't think that they're going to disappear anytime soon. And when you tell them things like, oh, light pollution is growing at a rate at 1%, well, that doesn't sound like it's a threat. That's really small. And you don't really detect that gradual change year after year, but that can grow over the decades. And soon then you can see your community with the Bortle scale of 3 or 2 is now at a 6. So what a problem could have been easily prevented is now this emerging issue is like, oh, now how are we going to deal with it? It's too far gone, or there's a much bigger issue than it could have been if we dealt with it when we first knew about it. So even though you have these two drastic situations, how do you encourage people to invest? How do you deal with these different perspectives and get them to care based on their perspectives and experiences? And so to address this final question, I'm going to invite Grace Rickard to give her examples. Grace has been instrumental in helping designate Borrego Springs in California as a dark sky community. And if you could please share your experiences collaborating with businesses as well as regions in support of dark sky initiatives and getting them to invest in our efforts.
Thank you. I feel like the other end of the chain here. Really appreciate all of you and respect all of you for the work that you do here. Mine is a very small part in a very small village, quite different from most of your other experiences. We're the second dark sky community in the world, and the only one in California. So far, I don't know, anybody else coming along? I don't know. We had no role models when we came up with the idea. A few citizens here in our village came up with the idea that, hey, we could be a dark sky community. But all we had was Flagstaff to go by, which was quite a different story. So we basically, we're a group of about 6-7 people that went through the process of filing the application. It did take us about 3 years to get, because we didn't know exactly what we were doing, and I'm not sure IDI had their set ideas either. But we did get that 10 years ago. It was celebrating our anniversary next month, and we're very proud of that. And I have to have notes here. We also, I think, are not a particularly good example for most villages, for most people who want to be a dark sky entity. We're a small town, only about 2,000 people, maybe 3 in the winter time. We're surrounded by a state park, which is also a park, a dark sky park now, Anza Borrego Desert State Park, which is a 600,000 acre, the largest state park in the contiguous United States. So we're this little pimple in the middle of the desert with no close neighbors. So we don't have much light pollution. However, some of your pictures did show something that we have, and that's from the side. Even though it's 30 miles away, we get light pollution from the far side of the Salton City. We have Salton Sea, and we have no control over that. It's not even in the same county, so we may have to go out for that to figure out what we're going to do. I'd like to give you a couple examples. of what we've done. One of ours is Wells Fargo. They have only an ATM where we are, and a small building that they own, and they had very high lights, very poor lights, and we've talked to them a number of times, sent them letters, talked to people, and said, couldn't you make the lights? They were, of course, straight out, and we wanted them to be down. And they said, oh yeah, we'll come, we'll send our man out, you know. Well, the man never showed up. We called several times. And finally, we talked to, my husband was down there, and they had the serviceman that was coming around to check the property and all. And so Jim talked to him, and he said, couldn't you do something to lessen the lights from these fixtures? And he said, no, you know, why? And so Jim talked to him up for a while. And he said, well, I'll see what I can do. And he actually got some aluminum plates and put them inside the fixtures. So, but without telling, we said, well, we'd like to give you a good certificate about. Oh no, don't tell Wells Fargo. No. Okay, so that way they were acceptable till 2 years ago, and then all of a sudden they were these pieces of material were taken out, and so they were very bright again, and we contacted them. They would never respond. So finally what we did was a petition. We have a table at our farmers market every week, so it was a very easy place because it was right on the Christmas circle, and people saw it and didn't like it, none of the bright lights. So we had a petition, and it was easy to get 30, 50, 60 signatures on it. And we sent that in to Wells Fargo, and they responded to that. Now that was in a period a few years ago when nobody liked Wells Fargo. And so they were really interested in image appreciation, let's say. And sure enough, they came down, and so now the lights are, instead of like that, they're like that. So that was a good success story. We are about 30 miles from Palomar Mountain. If we had been further away, we probably, if we hadn't been in San Diego County, which had special lighting restrictions because of the observatory, we probably would not have gotten our certification. And we hope to combine and become an area, a dark sky area or dark sky district, which hopefully would extend to Palomar and to some of the villages next to us, because we're already so large, but we'd like to make it a legal region or district. So what draws people to our village? Have any of you been to Borrego Springs? Oh, good. A good number. And why did you come?
I came to hike in the desert also to see the dark skies.
Good. So you all knew about the dark side before you came. Well, you're a special group, we have to admit, yeah. Usually what people come for with the draw in Borrego is, first of all, the flowers. The flower bloomageddon if we get the good rain. So we have big spring crowds that come because it appears in their newspapers from Los Angeles, San Diego. So they come down. They often stay the night, but frequently they will come down for a stargazing, turn around and go all the way back up to Los Angeles. That's one draw. Our animals, we have the bighorn sheep, which are endemic to our area, and we have lots of coyotes and good animals. That's the other second draw. And we have statues. I don't know if any of you, we have about 100 statues made of metal that are scattered throughout our valley. They were all put in by one man who had property alongside the road. And so he's got these huge statues of elephants and horses, the original Gomphotheres that have been found in the area, their bones anyway. And stargazing, that's a big draw for us. The Chamber of Commerce, of course, loves us, and we're very participatory in anything they do. We're in their parade every year, and and so that's been a good relationship. What else do I want to tell you about? Okay, no medals, girls, flowers. Gosh, one last. Okay, one last. Okay. One other example of a change in our town because of the dark sky, and that was a resort hotel that we have. They had the big round lights in front of every unit. They're about that big and very bright. But then the Riverside, what's it called, the Riverside? Telescope, it's for a group from Riverside that comes down every year, and so the resort would change out the white lights for red lights, and it was great for the evening that they were there. And then they'd take them back, and we thought, this is going to be wonderful, we'll have all of this bright lights. Well, of course, then change them back to white lights. So that we went through that a couple times, and then we had a program of dark sky friendly business, and they wanted to have a dark sky friendly business certificate. So we said, well, why don't you just leave the red lights in there? You know, it's plenty light. They have one every unit, you know, and that's what they did. They actually changed it out. So if you go down to Borrego Springs, down the hill, you won't see white lights. You'll see red lights at the bottom of the hill. Yeah. So.
Thank you. Thank you. My job's to get everyone out of here. But let's do the next one really so quickly that it's done in a flash. It's over. Back to Ashley. Thank you.
So all I wanted to mention was, again, finding that relatable hook with your audience. And that's something all of our panel members have mentioned, and you're going to know your community better than anyone else. So what's going to really speak to them? And there's so many wonderful benefits of effective outdoor lighting. How can you make that personal connection with the people you care about the most? And just to summarize everything that we've talked about today, not only knowing your community, giving them different examples to experience the night sky, either in artistic value, doing star parties, getting them out and experiencing the stars, having respectable, engaging conversations with your city council members, trying to meet that middle ground to move forward, and not giving up. And a lot of this is really difficult. You might be told no multiple times, but there's so many success stories in this room. It's very inspiring and encouraging to see what you have been able to do and what we are going to continue to do. Thank you.
Yeah. Everyone feel free to stand up and stretch while we just change one thing over.